Nice.
Welcome to the Golden Hour podcast experience with your hosts, David Altizer and Connor McCaskill. Let's go, you mother truckers.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Golden Hour podcast. This is a song that I've used multiple times in the past, but for now I'm very happy about because it's copyright free and we won't get demonetized, unlike the other Golden Hour song, Boo. Anyways, This is way more fun anyways. Welcome,
Maybe
everybody.
this just becomes the new theme song. Nintendo won't mind.
It's quite a vibe, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, let's fade that out. So how are you doing, Connor? How's your week?
Doing pretty good. Week's been all right. I mean, hey, we met up yesterday and shot some YouTube content, which was a lot of fun, getting to shoot with you again. Other than that, it's just been kind of normal stuff, just figuring out YouTube things or getting contract jobs ironed out, emails, normal stuff.
Yeah. Again, for many of you who may or may not know, Connor McCaskill has taken over the older Kinotika channel, which was the channel that he and I both kind of started together and grew over the years, that then was handed off to Zach Mayfield and then back to myself over the last year. And I don't have desires to continue that channel, but Connor did. And so I gave him the channel. So I'm really excited to see what he does with it. And he's already basically shot and produced 2 or 3 videos, which is awesome. So
yeah, I said I would make a video every Tuesday, and then I made 3 videos in 1 week, and then I didn't post anything today, which is Tuesday. So we're just kind of winging it. It is what it is.
So unfortunately today, got some sad news to get the show started. DPReview.com is to close. Dear readers, this was posted today on DPReview and tweeted out by our friends of the show, Chris and Jordan from DPReview TV. Dear readers, after nearly 25 years of operation, DPReview will be closing in the near future. This difficult decision is part of the annual operating plan to review that our parent company shared earlier this year. The site will remain active until April 10th, and the editorial team is still working on reviews and looking forward to delivering some of our best ever content. Yeah, okay. Your job is ending in a month. Let's make sure that we write really good articles.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to do a fine job sunsetting the website. Thank you for your support over the years, and we hope you'll join us in the coming weeks as we celebrate this journey. Sincerely, Scott Everett. What is the time scale? The site will be locked with no further updates made after April 10th, 2023. The site will be available in a read-only mode for a limited period afterwards. Does that mean they're just going to take a nuclear bomb to the entire website with 25 years of content? I can't believe it.
I certainly hope not.
So, I mean, the comments on this are blowing up. I mean, people are... After April 10th, I will never buy at Amazon again. Franz Weber says, for those of you who don't know, DP Review was purchased by Amazon several years ago. And so Amazon is the one that is making this decision.
I actually didn't know that myself.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah. And then obviously, Jordan Drake and Chris Nichols, mutual friends of ours, we've seen at events, and I've grown close to Jordan over the years, in particular, just being a video nerd. And this is sad news, I think, in a lot of ways, because that website has been kind of known as one of the top tier websites for photographers, and especially their forum. Their forum is extremely active. I don't know if any of you guys out there have done just a simple Google search for a certain lens review or a certain comparison to a certain camera. Often a DP review link or a DP review forum link will pop up, and then you dive into an old thread that was, documented like 10 years ago about a certain lens or a comparison or something. But yeah, this doesn't sit well for me. I'm not a huge fan of this news, but I'm kind of shocked, honestly. I wasn't expecting to see that. I was just perusing YouTube today, and I noticed they made a video. Jordan and Chris made a video announcing it. Whoa! Breaking news!
Sorry.
Chris Nichols and Jordan Drake are coming to Petapixel.
Oh. I was wondering. I was gonna say. I wonder what's gonna happen to those guys. I wonder what they're gonna do. That makes so much sense.
Holy cow! We were just talking about this, and we didn't know the
Yeah.
news. And I just went on my homepage, and here it is. Like
Wait.
immediate.
When was
This
this
was
uploaded?
posted 38 minutes ago.
Oh snap! Okay.
Looking to see ongoing shenanigans of Chris and Jordan? You're in the right place. Starting in May, there will be a brand new Petapixel episode created by two of photography YouTube's most beloved creators. Holy
Oh
cow!
wow.
Subscribe to
This is great.
Petapixel. This is wild that we are actually capturing this moment in the podcast as they announce this. Chris and Jordan are joining Petapixel, which I don't know if it's better than DPReview, but Petapixel is definitely like same kind of tier, I guess, in a way. Like it's
I
kind
mean, it's still around, so that's good.
it's still around, it still exists.
Yeah, it's still here. So, yeah, I'm stoked for them. That's great because I was thinking when I was about to make that point when you discovered this. I was curious what they were going to do, if they were going to go on solo or what, because I imagine that they would still want to stay in the space. And here you go, they're on Petapixel now.
Yeah, crazy. Holy cow. I was just messaging Chris and yeah, he didn't tell me.
Well,
It's been a
I want
great
it to be a
25
surprise.
It's been a great 25 years of deep review, but good things must come to an end. Jordan, Drake, and I especially enjoyed our 5 years with them hosting DP Review TV. Quite the news day. Sorry to keep everyone in the dark, but we can finally announce that the show is continuing with Petapixel. Please follow us on YouTube at Petapixel so we can keep this show going.
I love that.
Wow. What a day. Amazing. Okay. Well, that kind of eases, I think, everybody's stress who love Jordan and Chris.
Man, that went from sad news to good news pretty quick, didn't it? I mean, it's still sad that DPReview is going down, but hey, at least Chris and Jordan are going.
You guys messing with my emotions. Sick. Okay, cool. Well, everybody go follow Chris and Jordan at Petapixel. There's the solution to our beloved Chris and Jordan. Wonderful news. Sad news that DP Review is going away. One of my favorite resources that DP Review has is the comparison chart. I don't know if you've seen that, where you can like select which camera you have and compare it to another camera and change the ISO levels, change like RAW or JPEG shooting. Have you ever seen that?
No, I've actually never used that. I mostly just use their website for when I'm looking up particular cameras.
Yeah, the studio comparison chart. This thing is brilliant. So you select a camera. So we'll just do iPhone 10 versus the Canon RP versus the Nikon Z9 versus the Sony A6500, right?
Perfect. What a great comparison.
So you can see on the chart, there's this little box and you can drag it around. And as you're dragging it around, the image is updating to whatever camera you selected. And it's based on ISO level. So I can go to 800 ISO and compare that to all these other cameras. I can even change it to RAW, from JPEG to RAW, and see what the RAW compression looks like straight out of the camera. And it just updates so beautifully, and you can really see, how the noise performance is in certain cameras at certain ISO levels. And this tool is so valuable. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, every time a new camera comes out, you can just select it in here. And, R6 Mark II, there's the R6 Mark II. They've got that in there.
Yeah.
Every new camera that comes out, you can look at the skin tones, you can look at the sharpness chart, you can see where the moire is in the image. I mean, this is a very valuable tool. So I don't know. I guess there's a hole in the market for somebody to build something like that in the future. So
I would just buy that one from them that already works.
Yeah, who knows?
If they're going out of business, I mean,
I was thinking that Chris and Jordan would go solo, but it looks like Petapixel maybe matched or paid them more, matched
Yeah.
their salary or paid them more. So more power to them. And Petapixel still exists. So, there's that.
Hey, at least there's a happy ending. That's good. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear it.
I can't believe we captured that live. Wonderful. Congratulations, Chris and Jordan. And we will see you guys on the Petapixel YouTube channel. On the topic of YouTube channels, I wanted to give a kind of a quick status of YouTube for podcasting before we get into some follow-up.
How topical as we are on a podcast.
Yeah. So I experimented with Spotify video last week. So the last video we did is on YouTube and Spotify. And Connor, I'm sort of hashing this out with you live.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. I'm listening.
I think I told you this before, but I'm now even more so because of what YouTube is doing. I want to keep anything other than YouTube just audio only. That includes Spotify, because there's really no reason to do Spotify video other than it's just there.
I mean, it is kind of nice as a Spotify user, the few that we are apparently. For example, listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, I do mostly just listen to it as audio. But occasionally, for instance, he was interviewing a beekeeper and I was listening to it. And something came up where she brought in a beehive in the studio. And I was like, that's visually interesting. I think I don't want to just hear it. I want to see it. I can pull it up and there's the video. That's kind of nice.
I hear you on that.
Yeah.
And I think there's value in video. I'm not saying we're not going to do video.
Right.
I'm just saying, unless Spotify wants to write a check for $100 million, I don't see a reason for us from a business standpoint to.
I think they want to see a few million viewers first, but yes.
Yeah. Whereas on YouTube, you have the ability to use all these features that I'm about to share with YouTube podcasts, plus the distribution that YouTube provides. And if it's the exclusive place to watch the video, then we're not splitting our potential viewers. So my argument to what you're saying is, if you enjoy the video portion of this show, you're watching this on YouTube. That's the only place to watch it. And if you listen to it on Spotify, which up until last week, that was the only option to do anyways, then most of the time, a lot of people listen to audio on whatever app they want. And the majority of our listeners who are listening to this right now use the Apple Podcast app. So that doesn't even matter, I guess, that much. But YouTube podcast is now a thing. So this week they announced YouTube podcasts. And basically, YouTube is now formatting their podcasts. You can select a video that you upload and specify that it is a podcast. And YouTube is going to be working really hard, apparently, to basically start implementing video podcasts and categorizing it as a podcast in the same way that Shorts is categorized as something different than a long form video. The good news for this is, and Tyler Stallman and I were actually texting about this, is that for someone like Tyler Stallman, his podcast is called the Tyler Stallman Podcast, and his audience of people on his main channel of, I think he has 300,000 subs or something, they would probably find value in his podcast. But in the past, having a podcast mixed in with your normal content just diluted your content, because it's just a different type of video altogether. And people who subscribe for your, say, iPhone review aren't going to listen to an hour-long podcast necessarily, and vice versa.
Right.
But now, with the categorization that YouTube is doing with Shorts, we've been able to see how YouTube can essentially treat different types of videos completely differently, separate from each other, and then there's no punishment for it on your main videos per se. So this new feature, the ability to select your podcast video on YouTube and categorize it as a podcast, have album artwork, have it in essentially a podcast playlist is what they're calling it. It's now sectioned off as something completely separate outside of your main videos.
So is it gonna be a playlist, or is it gonna, like, if you're on someone's YouTube page, i.e. the
Mhm.
Golden Hour Podcast, how would that visually appear? Is it gonna be like a little tab that says podcasts, essentially?
I think that is the goal at a certain point. Like right now, everything looks kind of the same on our particular show. And then the Golden Hour Podcast, which is what I've done here, is it just shows up as a podcast. If you're
Mm-hmm.
watching the video right now, you can see there's nothing special about it. But there will be a little badge next to it that will call it a podcast. And if you go to youtube.com/podcasts, there's a whole like page and a whole section here of podcasts. And they're even putting Philip DeFranco in that category. But back to what I was
Interesting.
saying earlier about Tyler Stallman, like now he could essentially upload his podcast on his main channel and just put that in a podcast playlist moving forward.
Mm.
It won't like damage his main videos. So what that means for us, because I'm doing my own thing, you're doing your own thing, and Golden Hour is a collab between the two of us, it doesn't make sense for one of us to necessarily put it on one of our channels and do it that way. I think it still makes sense for us to have the ghpod channel. But what this does mean is for people like us who have this whole channel is only a podcast channel, we don't need to have a clips channel anymore. So I was about to start doing clips on the Golden Hour Podcast,
Mm-hmm.
but now because full length, hour long shows are categorized as a podcast and treated as such, that means that we can also upload shorts and normal videos being clips, to the main channel, and it all will work in a full synergy altogether now, which is awesome. That was always kind of what made the most sense to me, is like so many creators split off a separate channel and called it like Golden Hour Podcast Clips, or the Joe Rogan Experience Clips. Like I think he still has that active somehow. Right. I think when he did the Spotify merger, he was able to keep the GRE Clips channel. Although I don't know which one is him, to be honest. Is it the Powerful GRE? I think that's it.
Maybe is it not both?
I think Powerful GRE is him at Joe Rogan. I think this is actually him. Oh. And then let's see, is the other one GRE Clips? I mean, it's got a verified logo, so I guess they're both him.
Yeah.
He hasn't posted on this one in 2 years. So okay, so what happened was he went to Spotify and he just turned his main channel into a Clips channel, which is essentially an ad for the Spotify show.
Right. So I guess it doesn't breach whatever contract he signed.
Yeah.
No, this is really cool. I think that when YouTube introduces these new features, it's always good to jump on the train, so to speak, because typically YouTube with new features, they like to promote it. So potentially, who knows, maybe if we start designating all of these as podcasts, then they may start taking off.
And they're going to actually be inside of their podcast platform, which I think they're going to be pushing YouTube Music a little bit more. They're just trying to compete with Spotify, honestly. Like Spotify has their whole thing. In the video creator tab, or the studio, in the YouTube studio page, which I'm on right now for our podcast, there's now a tab called podcasts. So I go there and you can see the Golden Hour Podcast. And so I've got my description, a weekly show for camera nerds, coffee lovers, and content creators. And then I've got my podcast thumbnail, the
little badge.
And I've just got all the videos from when we rebranded in here.
Perfect.
So moving forward, anything, with you and me in it is going to be in here. I have a whole, I guess, 2 years worth of content without you involved that I can maybe put in a separate playlist. Sure. But I just kept it with this one here. But anyways, I just think
it would just be you could just call it Golden Hour BC before Connor.
Yes, exactly. So it's interesting stuff from YouTube. I think they're trying their best to compete in this space. I think channels like H3 Podcast and Flagrant and Impulsive, those types of shows are huge. I mean, they're getting millions and millions of views, and they're 2-hour long conversations in full podcast format, and it's totally a format on YouTube. And we do have people who watch our videos on YouTube as well. So I think I said it once before, but I'll say it again. I feel strongly that audio will still remain audio on all other platforms, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And then on YouTube, that is where all of the video content will be viewed moving forward. Especially now with all this stuff, YouTube is just incentivizing us as creators. And hopefully as the monetization grows and as things change, maybe even some monetization options will be available to podcasters separate from standard ad revenue. So we'll see.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean, yeah, you make a fair point. I obviously still like video in Spotify, but yeah, if we consolidate it all to one place, that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you want to watch the video moving forward, youtube.com/ghpod. All right. So we've got follow up this week. Some things that we talked about in the last few episodes. This one in particular is a little surprising to me. The Benro Theta. Do you remember that? What was that, Connor? Tell us what that.
Boy, this sucker here, this auto leveling photography tripod that looks a lot like the Peak Design tripod that we made fun of in the last episode. Or was it the last episode? It doesn't matter.
It was 2 episodes ago.
We made fun of it. We're like, this is stupid. This doesn't make any sense. And turns out we may still be right, but people don't agree with us. So it raised, is this Kickstarter? Yeah, Kickstarter. It raised over $1 million on Kickstarter. So people are stoked for this for some reason. It doesn't really make sense to me. Dave, does it make sense to you?
No, I don't know if people understand really what this actually is doing. Cause like I said, if it was a ball head that leveled, I think it'd make more sense to me, but it's just the legs that level, which just seems strange because then it's like, how does that help you? If your camera is still not level, you're still having to use a bubble to level your camera, but then the tripod itself just the tripod levels itself. Like that's, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of people who are photographers who this is a kind of a headache for them. I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yes, but you're right though. Like it levels the legs, but as you said, you still have to level the ball head after the legs level. So it's kind of it doesn't make any sense. And then also, I don't know that I would take the fact that it levels itself over. I'm assuming it's going to weigh significantly more because it's got a host of battery and the mechanics that make it work at all. So it's just going to be heavier than any other tripod of the same size.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is lightweight, actually. I mean, the tripod is 2.7 pounds, the smaller one, and then there's a bigger one that's 3.6 pounds. So
interesting.
But I don't know. I think they're obviously onto something because the truth is tripods are extremely useful and we all use them. But every time we whip out the legs and, just literally just use the tripod, it is often a bit of a headache. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's just 1, 2, 3, take the legs out, loosen the ball head, look at the bubble, level.
What's this that it's saying right now in your screen? It said roll locking mode. Is that like something that makes what we're talking about better? Like it auto levels itself and then it does the auto locking mode, which then would mean you're perfectly level?
With roll lock. No, I think that's just like the side to side, like left to right, panning lock.
Okay.
So it's just a normal ball head.
Yeah.
So it's obviously made for photographers, and I guess photographers out there, set their camera up on weird, settings and they need to level it. I don't but hey, way to go, Benro, for
good job, guys.
For doing this. They had a $50,000 goal and it is officially succeeded at.
Yeah, they overshot it a little bit, if I'm being honest, by about 1.3 mil, but who cares? Yeah.
Way to go, guys. Very interesting. Maybe we'll have to get one for a review and see if it's actually worth it.
Yeah, we'll use it for the podcast. I'll set up my my tripod and it'll level itself, which will be super handy.
And then another follow-up is actually a leaked photo, apparently, of the rumored Sony ZV-E1. An image that is very blurry and it looks kind of warped and strange. But it does look very similar to, this is an image of the ZV-E10. It looks very similar to that, with the only difference being the on-off switch is near the shutter there. It's got a very kind of, as we expected, cheap plasticky build to it. It's got the big red record button. It's got that big bokeh button that both the ZV-1 and the ZV-E10 have. So again, if the rumors are true, this is a camera that will probably look very similar to the ZV-E10. I mean, obviously, as we're looking at this leaked image, but it will share the same sensor as the FX3 and the Sony A7S III. So
yeah, it looks like it has a dedicated switch for going between photo and video mode, and S&Q as well. That's nice. I like that. That's a nice little bonus toggle switch.
Yeah,
if it's true, if that's real.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty real to me.
Yeah, it doesn't look fake.
It's got a little zoom rocker built into it as well, which some of the other cameras have. So maybe it'll be sold with a kit lens that has a power zoom. Sony has made a couple of those power zooms. There was a 16 to 35 f4 that I know came out recently that was like a power zoom. So
they're pretty cool. I dig the power zoom lenses.
And do you think they're going to keep IBIS in this, or will they remove it to keep the price down and the mechanics?
I think it's going to have it.
Okay.
That's since it's for the vloggy types is what I'm guessing. Yeah. I think they're going to want that. So I think it'll have it in it.
Or at least, if they don't have that, then they got to have at least the, what's it called? The stabilization in post production, the catalyst browse features. So you could stabilize it using the algorithms and the, all that sensing data that it has. So,
I mean, that's nice and all, but that would annoy me. That would be enough reason to not buy it. If it was like, you can use our post-processing website, and be like, yeah, no, I'm going to get something else.
So let's place our bets then. I'm betting that this is a true leaked image and that it will look like this. It'll resemble the ZV-E10. I don't think there will be a mechanical shutter. So there's no flap or curtain that goes up and down. It's going to be an electronic shutter. And I think they will get rid of the IBIS. So that's my bet. No IBIS.
I think that it won't have a mechanical shutter. I think that's correct. But I do think it will have IBIS, just because of who they're potentially, in my opinion, going to be marketing it towards.
And it might not be cheap either. It might not be that cheap.
That's why I'm starting. I said in the last episode, and I in my YouTube video, I ended up going with your theory on the price point. But now that I'm thinking about it still, I think I'd agree with my previous self in the last episode where I said it's going to be more money than the A7 IV.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know why. That's just where I stand, because I think it will still have IBIS, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we shall see soon enough. Interesting camera news again. Very interesting Sony manager interview. E-Mount was a failure from Sony. They were close to joining Micro Four Thirds, and the E-Mount original idea was to make super compact cameras, which I've always wondered why Sony's E-Mount is so teeny tiny, especially when they've got these massive full frame sensors. And when you look at the comparisons, or when you look at the competition, when you look at an E-Mount compared to, say, the RF mount, the Z mount from Nikon, the Leica mount, all of those mounts are huge compared to Sony, like twice as big. And so this interview with Mr. Shigeru Ishizuka, vice chairman of the Sony Group, talks about kind of the history here of the original A-Mount system, which was their first camera system on SLR. It wasn't mirrorless. It was an actual mirrored camera.
I was going to say, I honestly, like, just being frank here, I don't think I've heard the phrase A-Mount lenses from Sony. I've only ever heard Sony E-Mount. So this was the predecessor to the E-Mount with their SLRs is what you're putting down. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, and I think there were some A-mounted mirrorless as well. But yeah, the A-mount system,
Okay.
which you can see in the video here, was it was actually a DSLR. It's like their
Yeah.
EF. But yeah, the A-mount system was a failure from a business point of view, and in 2008, they seriously considered to join the Micro Four Thirds system, which Olympus and Panasonic were involved with. And the Micro Four Thirds system is unique to any of the other camera systems. It's an open sourced platform, so technically, Canon, Nikon, Leica, whoever could be involved in Micro Four Thirds if they really wanted to, without having to pay a license or pay like a copyright or anything. It was just it was designed in partnership, I believe, with Panasonic and Olympus, but they made it an open system, from what I understand, because they wanted to basically encourage people to make lenses for it so that the ecosystem would be built out, because it was a
Right.
completely new ecosystem.
So yeah, their idea with that was like, okay, if Canon joins our ecosystem and they make a bunch of lenses, then those lenses, that makes their lens lineup for Panasonic even better,
Exactly.
kinda, because you could just natively slap on a Canon lens on Panasonic. But I guess it didn't work out.
Yeah, so the E-Mount system original idea was to create a super compact system. There was no plan to create a full lineup of lenses, and also there was no idea to even go full frame. So, when you look at, again, this picture on this thumbnail here, you can see the E-Mount does fit around an APS-C mount pretty well.
Yeah.
But as we've seen with full frame, I mean, there's an image here at the top. The sensor is literally bigger than the mount. Like, you can see corners of the sensor being covered by the mount. They have to put that thing so close to the mount, and that's why Sony's stabilization has struggled in the past, is they're just not able to move that sensor around very much because their camera mount is so small. And if you look here,
The actual
RF,
mount would just get in the way.
if you look at my webcam here, this is the RF mount. And we're going to talk about this camera, obviously, the Canon EOS R50. But look at how freaking massive Canon made the RF mount. This is an APS-C sensor, and you can just see how much extra room it has. It's absurd when you look at an APS-C sensor on here. But even with a full frame, there's a lot of room to go on the RF mount. So that's why when you look at all of the other competitors, they've decided to make larger mounts, obviously, to accommodate larger sensors, to give better room for IBIS. But Sony was just ahead of the curve, and they were doing this back in like 2008. So,
Do you think this is going to bite Sony in the tail? Because like right now, that's helping them a ton, because that just means any E-mount lens ever can be just slapped onto any Sony camera, and it works great. And that's wonderful. That's awesome right now. But, Canon with the RF or Nikon with their Z-mount, that just significantly reduced the native lenses that could be put on there, because they haven't made the lenses yet, obviously, or they're working on making the lenses. Yeah. But down the line, is that going to be a problem for Sony? Is Sony going to, 2 years from now, end up having to make a larger mount anyways, and now they're behind everybody else? What do you think?
That's a really good question. I think you might be onto something, because we're looking at Canon doing potentially a 24 to 105 f2.8 IS lens. I don't know if those types of options are available to Sony. I don't know. Maybe it's just Canon has better, engineering, and they're able to come up with these things. But I do think that these companies like Canon and Nikon, because they were so late to the game, they were able to take notes from Sony and look at kind of the future and say, having this larger mount will allow us to, they say, have basically balance the lens better, is what I remember Nikon told me. A Nikon rep told me the Z mount is massive because they're able to actually push a lot of the weight of the lens further back so that it's better balanced in the hand. I don't necessarily feel that with Canon, but that's something that Nikon said. So those types of like engineering things, I wonder if that's an issue for Sony. I know for me, when I pick up a Sony often the lenses, especially some of those bigger G Masters like the 24-70, often still just feel a little top heavy, front heavy. And
So
maybe
I was
that's
going to
why, but then
say,
they also have tiny, teeny little primes too that nobody else
yeah.
has. So, but I think there might be some limitations with IBIS in the future, and especially if they ever want to go to like a medium format. That I think that's completely out of question. But that's
Mhm.
maybe not something that they're interested in at the moment.
No, probably not. But I do like, so for instance, I just pulled up an image of the 24 to 70 G Master lens from Sony. And if you look at their lens, just looking at how it's made and how it looks, it has to taper like a cone down to the size of an E-mount lens. You can tell the size that the lens wants to be, and then they clearly have to taper it down to fit that smaller mount. Whereas if you look at Canon's 24 to 70 L lens, it doesn't taper. It just is like a full on like cylinder, like a soda can almost. Well, maybe not a soda can, but it is the size that it is.
Yeah,
Or it does taper a little bit, but just not near to the extent. So I wonder if
it's almost like
it,
with Sony lenses, it's almost as if there's an adapter in front of the lens, to adapt to
yeah,
the tiny little mount that it has.
it's almost exactly. It is almost as if there's an adapter built into every lens because clearly the lens wants to be wider.
Whereas
And
when you look at the Canon, though it does have a nice taper that may be a bit of aesthetic too. But I mean, yeah, I mean there's a taper here.
there is a taper. It just doesn't feel like it just doesn't feel as extreme as the Sony. But maybe I'm being too critical. But it literally isn't as bad as the Sony because the Sony mount is smaller.
What's
It's an E-mount.
funny about Canon is the RFS mount is like it's the opposite of like these
Yeah, that's
tiny
the
little
opposite problem.
lenses that they're tapering out to a large mount, which I think is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, the RFS, like anything for example the R50, the lenses look stupid. No offense, Canon, they just look dumb. They don't look premium. They could be premium, but they just don't look premium. They look so much cheaper, and I think it's because of the large amount, and it's kind of ironic. Although if you put for example, my 24 to 105 on the R50, it looks like a nice meaty camera, even though it's not. It's tiny.
So for our main topic, Connor, what are we here to
Yes.
talk about?
We are here to talk about the lovely, the new, the amazing, or at least better than the M50, the R50, the Canon EOS R50. We both ended up snagging one. You got it there with the kit lens. I ended up not getting the kit lens, so I'm glad you got it because I needed it. It helped. It helped when you let me borrow it. I just bought the camera ASAP as soon as you were like, "Hey, it's out. You don't have Twitter, you dummy." And I was like, yeah, I don't have Twitter.
And you don't need it.
Yeah.
That's because I keep you in the loop.
Yeah, you just keep me in the loop. You are Twitter for me, so that's really handy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just went on Amazon and purchased it pretty much immediately because this camera is kind of cool. It's kind of a big deal camera for us because we've talked about it before. But the Canon M50 was probably one of our larger. It was the largest breakout camera for us in the YouTube days when we were both doing the YouTube stuff. And this is the sequel, and so it'd be cool. It was cool to get our hands on it, to play around with it, and compare it. At least yesterday we compared it to the M50, and I'm working on that video right now.
Yeah. So everything you said is true. The Canon M50 was such a smash hit for our channel, and it wasn't necessarily because that camera is like amazing or anything. It's just I think it just had all the right things that were needed at the time as YouTube continued to blow up more and more and more and more people wanted to start creating on YouTube. It was kind of during the Casey Neistat era, and the M50 was more than half the price of the 80D or similar cameras at the time that, like the 1DX Mark II or Mark III that no, the 1DX Mark II that Peter McKinnon used.
Yeah, that camera was ridiculous for vlogging with.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. But
yeah,
a lot of YouTubers who were up and coming were picking up the M50, and I'm sure you remember, Connor. We went to CES, I think that year
Mm-hmm.
after the M50 came out, and I had people that like actually came up to me and said, "Oh, Dave, Kinotika M50, I bought my M50 because of you," or whatever.
Yeah.
At VidCon, I had a couple people come up to me and say the same thing. And we actually had a discussion with a Canon representative at CES that year, the year, 6 months after our M50 drop, which was in August. And we were
Mm-hmm.
still shocked that the videos, we made like 4 videos back to back to back in that August of that year. I guess it was 2018. And
Yeah.
6-7 months later, the Canon representative was like, "Yeah, we are shocked, but the M50 is still being sold like gangbusters on Amazon, and it's completely like our number one by far seller." Like
Yeah.
I remember he was telling us like, "We are shocked at how many of these units that we're selling." And
Well, it must have just been because of how affordable it was. Like you said, it was half
it
the
was.
price of the 80D or whatever else. So it's like, what was it, 650?
Yeah, I think a similar price to what it is now, which is what, 670 or something.
Yeah, 670. Yeah, it was so affordable. It was almost like why not? And even though it had limitations with 4K footage specifically, most people who were purchasing this camera probably were only messing with 1080p anyways. So for them, it totally made sense because there wasn't as many limitations in 1080p with the M50. And I think it was a Canon camera. It's easy to use. It was made for beginners and it looked pretty decent.
Yeah, and video aside too, it had an EVF, a flip screen, and the photos were raw photos that you could take.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to have full manual control. So basically, we've, even to this day, like up until the R50's announcement, there's still people buying the M50. And right
Oh, yeah.
now, there's like no reason for people to buy them. In fact, there's a lot of videos online saying, 2021, should you still buy the M50? No, like buy the
Yeah.
ZV-E10. And I think basically Sony saw the success of the M50 and made their own version of it,
Mm-hmm.
was the Sony ZV-E10, which we were kind of talking about earlier in the show. And that kind of became the new like king of beginner YouTubers and people who just need something pocketable and easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but that also has some limitations. There's no EVF on that camera. It's really cheap, plasticky body. And it's an old sensor, a very old sensor that's still using the same like A6300 sensor that they've used for all their cropped cameras for over the
Mm-hmm.
years. Well, enter the new R50. And now Canon has essentially fixed, in my opinion, everything about the M50 that I despised, but left all the things that make it essentially an M50. It's super cheap. This really is an upgrade if you're just wanting a camera to take pictures of your kids, a camera to film home documentation. It's so small. This is the more premium kit lens. There's 2 kit lenses. There's the really tiny, I think it's a 15 to 45 or something like that. And that one is pretty low quality. And then this one is the 18 to 150, which on the wide end, it's an f3.5 to an f6.3. It's a weird aperture range, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But this little kit lens is great. I mean, this one lens can do it all. You can take a reasonably wide shot, and you can take a very zoomed in telephoto shot. So, this thing is very easy to hold and very easy to carry around. If I had a little strap on it, this would be easy to put around my neck and take to the zoo, to take on vacation, which is exactly what I think this camera will be used for.
I was going to say, vacation spots, beware. You're going to see a lot of these floating around like Hawaii or something like that. Just because everyone's going to be, I think this one will be very popular, just like the M50. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I know there's more competition, especially from Sony, than when the M50 originally came out, but the M50 was so popular. There's so many people using the M50 who are probably now 5 years later looking to get something else. And if they're not directly upgrading, they may just want to find something of a similar price tag. And I mean, it is a direct upgrade because of everything that it is able to do. Obviously, I'm thinking a lot more on the video side. Photo wise, it's pretty much the same.
Mhm.
You do have the AI autofocus and how it's faster and it can detect more things, and that's exciting. That's great. But more on the video side, just with the unlocking of 4K and it's not cropped on a crop sensor, so it was like uber cropped back in the day with the M50, and then getting phase detect autofocus and dual pixel autofocus, and yeah, it's a nice little camera. I like it. There's almost no reason not to get it unless you want log.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is it shares a similar sensor to, in fact, I think it is the same sensor as the R10, which is the more expensive version of this.
Mhm.
And which I also believe is in the R7. So we know what that's capable of. With the R7, it's got IBIS, it's got Canon log, continuous recording, all that type of stuff. But this doesn't have Canon log, which is Canon's traditional little limitation that they do. It's completely false. They're doing it to protect their lineup.
Mhm.
Sony, unlike Canon, will actually even put in the ZV-E10. They put S-Log in it, even though there's no like 10-bit
Like,
recording.
yeah, I don't know why Canon continues to do this stuff.
Put log
I mean,
in it. It wouldn't hurt it.
I know why they're doing it, but I hate it.
But
Yeah.
we had the M50. My dad has one, and so he let us borrow it. And when you hold the two side by side, and by the way, if you're listening to this, maybe by now Connor's video will actually be live on his channel. So check out Connor McCaskill's channel. He will be posting a side by side comparison with the original M50. I find
Featuring David Altizer.
that's right.
Yeah.
I find that the body is more comfortable to hold. It feels more premium, and I would say, as I've used the ZV-1 and the ZV-E10 quite a bit. This is certainly very plasticky. It's definitely not a weather sealed camera, but I think this is a more premium build. It's got the nice kind of leatherette
Yeah.
coating around the sides.
I mean, the grip is significantly deeper as well, and it is slightly larger,
Yeah,
I believe,
think
just
that's
in
right.
general, because it had to accommodate the RF mount, which is massive compared to the sensor. I mean,
Yeah.
you already pointed out, but it's pretty ridiculous. And
They've
obviously, by making it a little bit larger, it just immediately made it more comfortable to hold. Because honestly, the M50 felt like it was the size of a camera for a child,
yeah.
which maybe that's who it was for. Maybe it was for children getting their first camera and starting a YouTube channel and all that great stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, the R50 seems to be like a nice middle ground.
So yeah, overall the build is great. It uses the older batteries as well, but I think they've since updated it. So now we're on the LPE17. The M50 was LPE12, I believe. So they've done
Mhm.
multiple iterations on it. You can now charge it via USB-C, which again is a welcome addition. The older camera had the awful USB micro, which I'm so glad
Yeah.
that has completely gone away. Whereas the ZV-E10 still has the micro port on it. But so we've got a proper USB-C port. So on the inside, we have a 24.2 megapixel APS-C sensor, which means when we're recording in 4K, even though we're not getting Canon log, and even though we're not really getting a traditional 10-bit option for video, it is a downsampled 6K to 4K downres, and it's got that same Digic X image processor in it, which is like the same one that they're using on the top of the line R3. So,
Mhm.
a $3,000 mirrorless camera like the R3 that has, best in class autofocus and eye tracking, it translates all the way down to this $679 camera, which is pretty.
Canon R3 is a bit more expensive than $3,000, but yes,
Is that true? Was it
it's
35?
six grand.
Holy cow. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
$5,999.
I just did a quick check when you said $3,000. I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah, you're right. So that camera and this camera have a similar autofocus system. The R50 has the AI detection in terms of cat focus or vehicles or human tracking and stuff.
Birds. So all the bird photographers are going to be really stoked
It's got a
for this.
vertical movie mode, and I noticed as I was using this camera for photos as well, when I go to a vertical shooting mode, all of the UI rotates
Mhm.
with the EVF, which I don't know why more cameras do this. I know a lot of them have accelerometers built into it. It would be a simple software thing, I feel like, to add that. So just a really nice to have feature, like as you move your camera back and forth, everything translates and it's able to like move the whole UI
Mhm.
to vertical mode. But if you're actually shooting video vertically, then when you import your footage into Premiere or Final Cut or whatever, it's
iMovie is what this will be imported
yeah,
into.
it will be imported in as a full vertical video without you having to rotate it 90 degrees. So it's got the multi-function shoe as well, which is nuts that they fit that in there.
Yeah.
So that
I just
technically means you could plug in the XLR adapter from Tascam and have full XLR audio input, I believe.
it's just a pretty well thought out camera, and it doesn't feel like, for the first time in Canon history, that it's been hindered on
Yeah.
purpose, right? Is there anything about this camera that you're like, man, they really messed that up because they didn't include this? It's because of the price at
Other than log,
$670.
I wish they gave us even just old fashioned Canon log, like original, not even C log 3. I don't care. Just
Yeah,
something would be nice to have. But
I guess that is a fair enough point, but even still at 670, it's like, so what? It doesn't have log. Like the person who's buying this camera probably doesn't care. I might be
yeah,
projecting here, but probably doesn't care about a log image.
yeah,
I mean, shoot, when you're in the menus and you're cycling through things, like if you are pressing, it displays like with a picture and then also text what each setting is going to do,
yeah.
which, because it's made for people who don't know anything yet, which is great. I mean, there needs to be a camera like that. This is a camera that's designed to get you interested,
Mhm.
to get you started, and then hopefully, in Canon's eyes, to get you hooked on the Canon system so that you buy an R10 or an R8 or R6 Mark II or whatever for your
Yeah.
next camera.
And that's the cool thing about it, is because it's now sharing the same mount as their top of the line cameras, the RFS mount, which is
Mhm.
designed for a crop sensor. It's still the same mount. It's just this is a crop lens on a crop sensor. So if you do want to upgrade your lenses, you technically could put a full frame RF lens on here. In fact, that's what Connor did. He used his 24-105 RF on here.
Works great.
But as you grow, you can start to buy more lenses and then buy a new body and change it out. But I'm going to just talk about this from my perspective, as I'm not a beginner. I'm not somebody that doesn't know how to use a camera.
Right.
Yet I still find I really like this, because there's some needs that I have as like a daily carry type user that this serves. First off, it's super small. So taking this out, as a dad, this is the perfect dad cam, honestly. I was taking pictures of my kids with this. The autofocus is super snappy, super quick. And like I know people are going to argue this all day long about color science, but I just find the colors on this to be more pleasing than Sony. I'm sorry, I hate to say it, but the skin tones just look better to me, and it just has a more pleasing image. And
I mean, if you're specifically talking about non-log images, then 100%, I think I agree with you. Like if you just compared the two standard modes from a Sony camera to a Canon camera, this price point or any, because I guess this color science is mostly the same. Yeah, Canon looks better. It just does.
And there's also something to be said too about the ease of use with a Canon camera that you just don't simply get with a Sony camera. There's the menus are just laid out better. And then this camera in particular does have kind of like the dummy mode, is what I'll call it. But it's
Yeah.
like Connor was saying, it's just laid out very simply. So if somebody asks me, "Hey, Dave, I'm starting a YouTube channel," and this person I know is not a professional videographer, this is my number one pick. This is, I think, the best camera to get started because it's at a price point that isn't mind blowing to somebody who's starting out. The
Mhm.
S5 Mark II, I think, still is one of the best kind of like hybrid cinematographer cameras / full frame photography cameras out there. And for the price point, there's nothing like it. But $2,000 is like, even that is just, unheard of for a lot of people. It's ridiculous.
yeah, it's ridiculous. Like if I, talking to my mother, right, and I'm like, "You're going to want to buy this camera. It's $2,000." She'd say, "Not a chance." I tell her buy this camera at $700, and she's still kind of like, Maybe not."
Yeah, exactly.
Because my iPhone does it, but at $700, it is a much more palatable price to purchase something.
Yeah, and to compare with the Sony ZV-E10 is coming in at $698, so it's $700.
That's
But
definitely priced competitively. Good job, Canon.
in my opinion, the $679 R50 it's a better buy because you're getting an EVF. You have that hot shoe, so you can add some of those things to it.
Mm-hmm.
You get the better color. You have the ability to use the amazing RF lenses in the future, as they probably hopefully have more RFS lenses to come. And it's a more modern sensor with better autofocus than the ZV-E10.
Right.
But obviously, the R50 doesn't have IBIS. It's a crop sensor, so it's not a full frame. And we're limited to 4K at 30 frames per second. But there's no limitations with the 4K mode, unlike the original M50. The only limitation being that we don't get a log or a proper 10-bit recording mode. And I think the recording limit is limited to 1 hour. And I don't think it has anything to do with Canon being stingy. I think it is them being a little conservative with the overheating.
Yeah. I mean, honestly,
small.
An hour straight recording with the R50, I mean, that's pretty good. I don't know who's going to be recording longer than that with it. Probably, you know.
I mean, I was hoping that we could maybe use these as like side angle cameras for YouTube stuff. But if we're just going to be doing this podcast via Zencaster moving forward, I mean, we could just use these as our webcams or whatever. Or
yeah, that's true.
I mean, or you're using your R6 and it looks way better. So
I could also use my R6. But hey, I mean, the concept of having, I mean, this is a good point, honestly. Like for someone like us, having an R50, which is cheap, that we can have set up with a lens
on top of your monitor.
It just sits there, right? It just sits there and never moves. And it's just a podcast camera, like some that I'm using right now. And I don't have to set up my R6 every time.
Yeah.
Maybe worth it. I mean, Is it worth it to me right now? No. But could it be worth it to me later? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I think for someone like me, like I was saying too, like, I've got a C70, you've got an R6. I mean, obviously, this is nowhere near the quality of that, but it can cut well with it. And this is such a teeny tiny little camera that you can kind of get creative with it and put it in interesting places. You can mount it on top of your camera and use it as a wide angle shot. I saw a gimbal by Zion Crane that actually allows you to put two cameras on it, so you can have like your main camera and then you can mount a smaller camera on top that's like a wide angle for dual lens coverage.
The ultimate wedding shooter.
Yeah, so like this is the perfect small little camera to put on top of another camera if you just wanted a wide shot.
Yeah, that's just going to be used by YouTubers for camera comparisons.
Yeah,
and then, we were doing that back in the day. I think we stuck the A6400 on top of the M50. Didn't we? Yeah. You had like some weird attachment, and we just went to town shooting with it.
That was the way to do it. That was the way to do it.
Yeah.
And then with the vertical shooting modes, I mean, obviously with the growth of all this vertical content on YouTube Shorts now, this is really, a perfect little run and gun camera to use for shorts. I don't really want to use an iPhone when I'm doing maybe like a man on the street style vertical thing, because I need some zoom range. If somebody's doing like a hidden camera or I'm interacting with people far away, having a big zoom is good. And the iPhone zoom is just not really high quality. And that's where a lens like this comes in handy and really competes against an iPhone, is once you start zooming in. iPhones just look terrible zoomed in. The telephoto lens, even though it's great that it's there, is garbage. And when you zoom in any further than what the actual focal length is, it's just a digital zoom, and it does not look good. So
no, it doesn't. Yeah, no, I think this is going to be a great option. I think vertical options in a camera are so necessary now, just based on how things work. I mean, shoot, even the kind of changing subjects a bit, but the DJI Air 2S that I have, which doesn't have a vertical mode. I've been really considering selling it for the Mini 3 because it does have a vertical mode, and that would be nice. Even though it's a downgrade, I think it would be an upgrade in versatility.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad that they've added that, and again, because it's got the newest sensor in there with the autofocus algorithms and whatnot of all the modern Canon cameras, it's in line with all their other stuff. And I think it's top of my list for a beginner YouTuber camera. It's got the mic jack, so you can plug in a boom mic or whatever.
Right.
Colors are great. Autofocus is great. Flips great.
The R10 is still a thing. And I went and checked it out. I mean, it's on sale right now on B&H Photo. So if you care, there it is. But it's pretty close in price. Is that going to be a camera that you would also potentially recommend for someone who's like, I'm under $1,000? What camera should I buy?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked super into the R10, but based on DPReview TVs, Chris Nichols, may it rest in peace. His opinion was the R10 is just a better body. It's got better photography features. It does have a 4K 60 mode with a crop. However, it's just a little bit, bigger and more comfortable to hold. I'm happy for Canon that they're making all these cameras, but Canon, come on, give us more lenses. Give us more lenses. Okay.
How many podcast episodes do we need to make where we demand lenses and they're not giving it to us? Come on.
For our after show today, tell us about the poster you saw in California, Connor. We had this discussion in the car yesterday about the kind of current state of movies and the movie theater industry.
We should have just recorded it in the car. We had the podcast already. So when I was in Hollywood a couple weeks ago, I saw a billboard for Top Gun Maverick, which is a little weird because that movie is not exactly new, but I guess no one's paid to take it down. So it's probably been up since the movie was getting advertised. And the slogan for it was kind of cheeky. It said, "Make movies great again." Obviously, you can tell what that's referencing, but it's just kind of bringing up a decent point and Dave and I were chatting about it in the car. It feels like movies have gotten so much worse lately, just in general. I mean, it's not a blanket true statement. There are some good movies that have still come out, but just as a whole, it doesn't feel like we're getting as many good movie options lately, which is making the theaters, I'm guessing, slowly go out of business because I don't know who's going to see these movies. Like, for example, Marvel's a great example. The newer Marvel movies have really been lackluster lately. The last one I saw was Doctor Strange 2, and I did not care for it at all.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting state of movies. It seems like even like the current Mandalorian series, it's out right now, and you and I are huge Star Wars fans, and neither one of us seem to like care to set aside time to watch it. In fact, I've been watching my favorite series on Netflix, Formula One Drive to Survive.
Nice.
Which has nothing to do with a franchise like that. And it's just good documentary storytelling done well. And I think I heard a quote from Mr. Beast once about a metric for YouTube that you can't really track. And that's really like human satisfaction. So if you watch a YouTube video and at the end you're just like, you're satisfied and you're like, wow, that made me feel something, that made me feel good. The last Mark Rober video, I don't know if you saw it, Connor. It's fantastic.
Was that the one where he went to Africa with the drones? That was really great.
Yeah. That was like educational, but also heartfelt, and like, these people are really making a difference.
Yeah.
And Mark is highlighting that. And like that video was really satisfying, when it's over, you feel something, and that dictates, the next video that I watch of Mark Rober's, I'm going to probably watch it because the last time I watched it, I was satisfied. So that concept, I think, can be applied to films as well and to franchises. I think these big companies like Disney think that, oh, we own Marvel, we own Star Wars, so people are just going to show up and they're just going to go to every movie and they're going to watch every show because
And that
they love it.
may have been true in the past because, as you said, it's like we were satisfied watching it. So it's like we watched, I don't know, let's just bring up Marvel. It's like everything, more or less, everything up to Endgame was really great. And the movies were made for audience enjoyment. And you could tell they put a lot of time and care into them. And then, so yeah, I think the first couple Marvel movies after that, we probably did just go see because everything up to Endgame was great. And we're like, great, all right, what's this next phase going to be? This is going to be cool. And then after a few movies that have been a little bit lackluster, some of them may have been better than others. I enjoyed the Spider-Man movie that came out, so that was good. But some have been less great, like the Eternals movie, which didn't do very well. Those are starting to leave bad taste in our mouths. So now that new stuff is coming out, we just don't care as much.
Yeah, and I think specifically for me with Star Wars, Star Wars is definitely my number one, franchise. Maybe close to Lord of the Rings, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is good too.
But I feel like those two are on their own tier. They're separate. It's just like my two sons. It's like, which one do you love more? It's like I love them both equally. But yeah, the George Lucas, Star Wars, even Episode 1, 2, and 3, Phantom Menace,
for all their faults,
there still was like some heart to it and some soul and just good storytelling overall. And I don't know, maybe I'm clouded by nostalgia, but the newer trilogy,
by hate.
The newer trilogy was just not doing it for me. And then the first season of Mandalorian was great, and so we all watched season 2, and it was okay. And then we all watched Boba Fett,
and that was not good.
And then we got so excited to see Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan.
Oh my gosh. And it was sad.
There were aspects of it that were cool to just see him as Obi-Wan again, but I think overall I was just like,
It didn't really feel like Obi-Wan, though. I think that was the problem. I mean, it was Ewan playing Obi-Wan, so that did feel like Obi-Wan, but just his character, the writers made that show because Obi-Wan is a big name, not because they had a story to tell. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
So the character was doing things and things were happening in the world that didn't make sense, but they needed it to happen so that a story could happen, right? So, that's kind of like what you were saying before. It's like Disney has these IPs and they're like, people will see it because it's Star Wars or because it's Ewan or because it's whatever, which is, again, true to an extent because I did watch Obi-Wan. But now that season 3 of The Mandalorian's out, I like The Mandalorian. It's just, it's like the last one left a bad taste in my mouth. So I don't feel like oh my gosh, I can't wait for the next Star Wars series. It's more like, man, I really hope the next Star Wars series doesn't suck as much as the last one.
Yeah.
That's more what it's like.
There's an article here. The Mandalorian sees a huge drop in viewers for season 3. The Book of Boba Fett debut, or the debut of Star Wars Andor was 50% higher than Mandalorian. But yeah, this is even lower than Obi-Wan. It's lower than Boba Fett's viewership.
Andor was good. That was one that I also put off watching probably because of Obi-Wan.
I haven't seen that one yet, but all this to say, now let's refer that back to the theater industry. Obviously, COVID kind of already shook up an industry that I feel was slowly collapsing because the streaming networks were just getting better and better, and the series are, the Obi-Wan series might as well be a movie in terms of production. I mean, storytelling wise, that's all debatable, but like all these big HBO Go or HBO Max, Netflix, and Disney Plus series are as high production and as expensive as a movie. And it's spread out over 9 episodes, so you can really tell a richer story. So I feel like the story
you should be able to tell a richer story. Should be.
You should be able to, or they just stretch it. But the film industry, we went to go see The Jesus Revolution, my wife and I, which, by the way, that film did 5 times better than they expected now in terms of people going to the theater. I think it's because there's a reason for people to go. If you're a Christian and you want to support Christian movies, go see this film. Jesus Revolution. It it did so well. Let's see. But then as we were walking in, I noticed there was an Ant-Man movie, and I was like, I didn't even know there was an Ant-Man movie. So
Yeah. And from what I heard, because I haven't seen it in all fairness, but from what I heard, Ant-Man, the new one, it's not doing very good. Like, not just that it isn't doing very good, it's that it wasn't a good movie.
Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah, the Jesus Revolution pulled in a whopping $45 million, and that's just in America. And I think the film only costs like $3 million. So
that's great for them. That's awesome.
The return on that is huge. And Christians have, we have a collective reason to go see this film.
Mm-hmm.
But, we were talking about Tom Cruise, how, make movies great again. He's giving us a reason to watch it because of the stunts that he's doing. Like,
it's a spectacle. It's you're not watching a Tom Cruise movie because the story is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Although the story of Top Gun Maverick I thought was pretty good. But that's not really why you're watching it. You're watching it because he is doing something that supposedly, I mean, maybe YouTubers can give him a run for his money now, but things that only Hollywood can do, right? So he's actually in these jets flying around for Top Gun Maverick. Or in the case of the next Mission Impossible movie that's coming out, he does like this crazy, you can watch it on YouTube, they do a whole breakdown of this like motorcycle stunt off of a cliff in Norway, I think.
Yeah, it's insane.
And it's insane. And you're watching the behind the scenes for that, and it just gets you like, oh, pumped. I'm pumped for this next Mission Impossible movie. I don't even really care that much about the story of Mission Impossible, but I just want to see it because it's going to be larger than life, and I want to see it in the theaters specifically because my TV screen won't do it justice. And I think more thought processes like that in the movie industry could really benefit the whole industry.
I mean, same for Avatar. Avatar 2. I actually never saw it, ironically, as we're talking about it. But
me neither.
I've heard that, it's a spectacle. It's a real spectacle to see. I just think Avatar is such a weird franchise because I haven't met anybody that cares about Avatar. Like, nobody wears like Avatar shirts and like is in the same way that a Star Wars nerd or like a Lord of the Rings nerd, like there's no Avatar nerds.
The thing with Avatar, which was always confusing to me, was at the time when it came out, like I watched it and I was like, that was kind of cool. But I never really thought it was like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't feel as like, I guess the CGI was the part that was like, oh, wow, this is amazing CGI. And it was good for the time. But the story and the characters is like, I don't know. No one knew what's the main character's name? I don't know. Couldn't tell you. And I think there was a video on YouTube that was titled like something like "No one cares about Avatar," and he just went up to people in I think Santa Monica, and he had money, and he was like, for X amount of dollars, who's the main character of Avatar? And nobody could tell him the name of the character. So now that Avatar 2 was coming out, for me and probably for you as well, I just didn't care because CGI is great everywhere now, which is I think the reason why people went and saw the first one. Not because the story was good, but because it was a spectacle to see the cool CGI. And this one I just didn't feel like had the same pull because every movie has good CGI now.
Yeah.
Not as interesting.
We do say that, but Top Gun Maverick has made $719 million, which is a ton of money.
Right.
Avatar 2, which has been out for less time than Top Gun Maverick did. It's still in theaters now.
Right.
$2.12 billion.
Okay. Well, I could be wrong.
It stands as the fourth biggest movie in history. It ranks behind only the original Avatar, Avengers Endgame, and Titanic.
Wow.
2 out of 3 of those, or 3 out of 4 of those are all directed by James Cameron. So,
wow, he's the golden child. I guess
Mr. Beast of the film industry.
Yeah. I wonder. Maybe I missed out. Maybe I should have went and saw it. Let me know in the comments. Should I have seen it? Was it like better? Was the CGI mind blowing? Because that's the thing. I'm like, how good could it be? You know, compared to something else out there.
Yeah, again, I haven't seen it yet either, but I mean, I've heard there was a lot of cutting edge stuff that he's done here, but you know, again, I think in a way, just like Top Gun Maverick gave us all a reason to go to the theaters, I think Avatar 2 also did that. And we're going to continue to see more and more of that. And that's why Martin Scorsese, who's, you know, a renowned director and auteur, is quoted at saying that, you know, those types of movies they're not movies. They're not cinema. They're roller coaster rides, you know? And it's like,
I think he meant that negatively, don't you think?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He's talking about Marvel movies in particular. Well, that's the thing right now is there's really two types of movies that are being made in theaters. There's the movies that all are nominated for Oscars and win Oscars that are artistic, and they often have some sort of political angle to it or some sort of reason behind it, with fancy actors and fancy writers and fancy directors. And it's kind of just for filmmakers almost.
Yeah, they're made to win Oscars.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily made to be enjoyable.
And then you have Avatar 2 that makes over $2 billion. And that's the difference.
I guess I should go see that movie. I wonder if you can still see it. Maybe we should go see it, Dave.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What do you got going on?
So check this out. So The Whale, you know that movie? It was like nominated a bunch of Oscars, and the guy won Best Actor. That movie only made $10 million. And The Jesus Revolution made $15 million opening weekend. So again, for context, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was nominated and won almost everything this year at the Oscars, it grossed a total of $113 million, which is nothing to scoff at for a low budget film like that. Yeah. But just to put that into context, I mean, you know, over $2.2 billion for Avatar. I mean, it's just like, it's such a difference. And Avatar, I think it did win best, you know, effects,
visual effects,
as it should. And then Top Gun won for best sound. But like, they don't give, the Oscars isn't based on which movie did more people go see and more people enjoy.
Well, I think
which one is the most artistic.
Yeah, I mean, because again, bringing up, it was either Infinity War or Endgame. One of those got best visual effects, but it's like, dude, that movie was the biggest movie pretty much of all time. I think it may be of all time. I'm not really sure. And it didn't win Best Picture. It's like, how's that even possible?
It's second to Avatar.
Okay. Yeah. It's like, how's that even possible? How did it not win?
Something
like something more than just visual effects, right? You would think it would get something more than that, and sure enough, it didn't.
I think Lord of the Rings did win Best Picture in 2002. So that was 2002? Was that The Fellowship of the Ring? So like, I feel like in a way that was the last time that a big Hollywood blockbuster type film actually was recognized at the Oscars. It won Best Picture. You don't see that anymore, like Avengers Endgame winning Best Picture.
Although, would Fellowship of the Ring be considered, like, I know it was a blockbuster, but it was also kind of like a new thing based off of a book.
Oh, The Return of the King, sorry. Won all 11 awards. It was nominated for, including Best Director, Best Picture. That's crazy.
Wow, I take it back. Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Return of the King. Yeah, maybe in a way that was like Hollywood's nod. Like, they waited until all three came out, and they were like, you know what, you guys, Peter Jackson and the whole crew that made this, we have to acknowledge all three of these movies. You know, we'll wait till Return of the King comes out, but we're just going to let them sweep the floor, because nothing like this has ever been done before, where they shot all three in a 3-year period. They pushed the boundaries of special effects. They adapted.
And practical effects, dude. They did some amazing practical effects in that movie.
That's why those old movies hold up so beautifully. We rewatched all of them when the Lord of the Rings show came out. Dude, those movies hold up so well because there's so many practical effects.
And I think that's why The Hobbit didn't do... I mean, there's a few reasons why The Hobbit didn't do very well. One of them being that for money, split it into 3 movies. That should have never happened. But also because like everything that you were seeing was all visual effects, which there were lots of visual effects in the originals as well. But I feel like they lost a lot of. They did some practical stuff in The Hobbit too. I guess I'm maybe being a little too harsh, but they just didn't do it as much, I think. And I think it lost some of its charm, is what I'll say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a. I feel like a movie like Lord of the Rings would that trilogy. I feel like if it had never been adapted and we had to wait until now for somebody to do it, it would not be as good as it is now.
I agree. I think it came out in the golden timeline for that specific film. It's like if it came out before, it probably would have been pretty cheesy, pretty campy. And if it came out after, it would just be highly processed.
Yeah, like The Hobbit. And
like The Hobbit. And the new Lord of the Rings show, which was okay.
Yeah, it was okay. So
yeah,
what do you guys think? Should we make movies great again?
Yeah. I'm not making a movie. Are we making movies?
Making 100 of them. All right. So if you guys are still listening, you are a trooper. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys.
Make sure to subscribe down below. Be on the lookout for all of our podcasts on the YouTube channel, as well as whatever podcast player you listen to. Please leave a rating or review in Spotify or Apple Podcast. And use those chapters. I work hard on those chapters to include. We work hard because now we're splitting the editing. Right? You're going to edit this one, right, Connor?
I guess so. I got 3 edits to do now this week before I go off to an event in San Diego in 6 days.
Good wow. Stuff. I can't believe it's coming up so quick.
It's coming up like a freight train. I got a lot to do.
Sweet. Well, again, I've been your host, David Altizer.
And Connor McCaskill.
And we'll see you next week.
See you guys.